current climate as Americans. I was sitting there and I was listening to this, and I felt like you had your hand on the pulse of our culture in a lot of ways, past and present. I mean, was that intentional when you were creating the music, or is that just something that was a byproduct, unintentional byproduct?
Wow, what you just said is really awesome, and I feel kind of overwhelmed by how. Yeah, I feel like that's really undeserving, but it's awesome that you feel that way about the music. I don't think, again, like John Paul and I continually sort of laugh at the fact that a lot of what we do is sort of following the muse and following the stories that are happening in our own lives. And as we're a part of the culture and a part of what's happening right now, I think that just sort of quietly oozes and seeps into the music. But it's not an intentional sort of like, let's make sure that we cover these particular emotions or these particular events that are happening. But we do, I remember writing the song on the day that Obama was, officially, in office and being sworn in. And somehow that made its way subconsciously into a song that we ended up writing, though you can't actually tell it. But I feel like I'm blabbing. What would you say to that, John Paul?
I thought you were being very. I thought that was great. I could have listened all day.
I'll pay you. Yeah, I'll pay you later. Thanks.
Well,
I think that's the testament to doing the collaborative thing. Is that what we do doesn't become intensely personal to one person, and that tends to bother me sometimes listening to solo artists. Is that it becomes all about them and about their hardships. And I think because we have the two of us coming at things from a different angle, not only from the female-male perspective, but she's married, I'm married, to two different people, and we live in totally different, even though we're both in the South, it's really different where we live. And so we bring all these things to the table, and so some sort of generality comes out of all of that. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's why we're tapping into it. But like she said, we really, really try not to think about it and just let it fall out and say, what would I like to hear?
Right.
Here it is.
Well, it is really interesting, that you touch upon, kind of coming from two different places. Because that's sort of what I noticed as I was listening to the music. While we're on the subject of the music itself, there's a lot of juxtaposing ideas. And imagery. One of my favorite lyrics that since I've only had the opportunity to listen to this album for a couple of days, but one of my favorite lyrics that struck me was Swan dive down 11 stories high, hold your breath until you see the light, and then don't go without me, say la vie, say l'amour. I thought it was brilliant because there's this sense of, again, getting back to what you guys were thinking a little bit, but there's a sense of encompassing loss and pain and all this stuff. But the interesting thing is that, there's also the opposite emotion, that you seem to try to play at the same time, because if you have pain and loss, there's also a sense of you must have loved once, or you must have, been there. When you're in that writing process, are you guys playing that back and forth, saying what about this and what about that, and should we, how does that play into your creating, when you actually sit down to create?
I think we most definitely do that. I think we sit back and we decide, all right, is this just too maudlin? Is this going one way too far? Does it need a breath of fresh air? There's songs like Falling that really never allude to things being better. They allude to things needing to end. So sometimes, but sometimes there's hope in that, where you finally decide, all right, it's time to move on and things are going to be better. That's my idea of a great love song, is a song that says everything in the world sucks except you.
Right.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you don't even have to say you love
That's my idea of a positive love song. That's my idea of one.
Well, I think you're right that I think like John Paul was talking about in terms of, bringing the different perspectives, whether it's male or female or, our own stories, which aren't quite varied, like between the two of us. I think bringing each of the stories together sort of does make it a stew. And I think a lot of what we write about is naturally about tension. Mm-hmm. That with every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And every time you're choosing one person, you're saying, I don't choose all the rest of you, and I think that's something that inadvertently, I think John Paul and I both are keenly aware of in our own lives, and that translates into music too. Yeah. Like you said, if we've experienced loss, it's because we've felt emotionally loved somebody, and I think that it's great that people are able to pick that up. That encourages me that you can pick that up, because we don't want to be dark just to be dark, and we don't want to be trite. We want to write about things that are real, and so much of what life is about those small battles every day. It's about the tension that we all sort of walk in every single day. So to write about that only seems natural, I think, to both of us.
Right. Well, I definitely feel that that's kind of what I guess, country music to some extent, that sort of had a bad rap for a little while about, everything, you lose everything in a country song or whatever. But
sure.
But the reality, though, of that is that, that it speaks a lot of truth. You don't have to have I personally don't think that you have to have a love song that directly says I love you. It could speak of all of the moments where you loved someone and they're no longer there or something like that. So at least that's my impression of your music in particular. Getting back to that is that that's what I loved, was that you probably had, I would argue that you might have had half of the songs that you created on Barton's Hollow were love songs in some sense, even if you didn't directly say it.
Oh, I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. I think that the parameters that people put around a love song are kind of ridiculous and myopic. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it, and so many different viewpoints. But thanks, man.
You're welcome.
To only have the album a couple of days, man, that's pretty amazing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the name of your group. How did you come up with a name like Civil Wars?
It was.
Well, I wanted to be the Korean War, but wouldn't go for it.
Oh my gosh! Are you done? Are you gonna keep going?
No. Okay. Can you imagine the touring things that we could do with that? Come on.
You're still going.
Not right now.
You're still going.
Not right now.
You're still
It's probably not good. All right, go ahead.
It really was. It was a series of weeks where we were, after John Paul was sort of like scuffing his heels on the ground a little bit, like, so do you want to be in a band together? And me being very excited to do that, and also feeling shy to even talk about, what it could be like. I think we started looking into the few songs that we had already written together, and a lot of them, like I just mentioned, a lot of them sort of speak about like personal battle or struggle within yourself, or things that you're warring with, either with somebody else or with even what you believe, or who you love or who you don't love, or who you hate, who you don't hate. I mean, it's all of those things of sort of airing out the fact that everybody is enduring a great battle, whether or not that they let people in on that. But it can also be great, also can mean quite quiet and behind the closed doors, just as much as it can be out in the open. And so I think that was, and then, the fact of the matter is, like, I moved from Northern California to Nashville 11 years ago, and John Paul is a good old Southern, not old, but a good Southern gentleman, and I think that too, we wanted to make sure that the music, the style somehow was represented in that, and that's kind of what we landed on.
Mm-hmm.